Now that I have the packing paper removed, you can see how well the Prinsu CabRac has been packaged. It has a wrap on the ends and foam sheets between each of the two bars. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that and remove the packing and get to the crossbars that are underneath. A word of note, when you're unpacking, you'll see some cardboard underneath. Be very careful because between the two sheets of cardboard is the windscreen. Right. When you open the box, you're going to find three different bars. You'll have the plain or unanodized aluminum bar here with plain tracks front and back, and of course on the sides. You'll find several of these larger anodized pieces. You'll see there's some drop-in grooves here, none on the sides and back. Okay, again, so there's those drop-in grooves. And there'll be a single bar, one track with a drop-in groove and none on the sides and back. Now these drop-in grooves are very helpful when you install your rack, that you can add accessories or add hardware and drop them in and into these grooves without having to uninstall the bars from your roof rack. That's a great addition. All right, so once you take the wrap off the end, you'll see you have exposed one of the side rails here. All right, front and back. So this is the back, because there's the Prinsu logo. You see a very nice contour piece of metal, and this larger tapered front, that's obviously going to be the front end. Now, you also notice there's smaller and larger grooves here. Now, these are where the cross members can install. You can either install into these smaller grooves and make it less adjustable, or maybe even straddle it between the two, or you can put them into the larger section here and allow it to adjust back and forth. Now, the only two places that are not going to be adjustable, here is the rear installation hole. That's for that single track anodized piece. It's going to install right here. The reason for that is, again, the rear antenna, for the FM radio and satellite radio off the cab. So that's where that single bar will go. All right, so I went ahead and laid out all the bars in their proper position. As you can see, I have centered each of the cross members in the larger groove here. And as you go down the line, each one will be centered. I think that's some excellent spacing. Again, we need to make sure we leave some room around the installation feet there for attachment to the cab. But it looks like I actually will be able to go ahead and do that and not obstruct it too much. So I'm going to go ahead and install all the pieces. Again, putting the plain or unanodized piece up front. All right, so here's what I've done. I have the bolt with the locking washer and flat washer installed. Let me get a little different angle there. There you go. All right, and then on the back side, here's our special nut that will fit in the groove. Again, flange side down. All right, so I've left a little bit of a gap there so we can slide it into the channel there. All right, we have the installation of the hardware done. As you see, we have the nuts on the back. They are left loose, okay, on purpose. So again, we have a little bit of gap there so we can install them into the groove there. All right, so I laid the wind deflector on its face with the nuts sticking up, and of course gravity will help keep it up a little bit. All you'll need to do then is align the grooves here of that channel with those nuts, and once things are inside, you should be able to just slip it right on over. All right, as you can see, it's been actually fairly quick assembly to get to this point, so we're going to go ahead and again just capture that last set of nuts, and now we're flush. So the bar should be flush on both ends of the windscreen. All right, you may recall earlier in the video we were talking about the installation holes. Now, if you bring the bar up, you'll see that it's either going to align with the top hole in the groove or the bottom hole in the groove. So there are going to be two installation options for the Colorado ZR2. I'm going to go ahead and start them in on the top hole and groove rather than down lower. So again, it looks like it'll be pretty easy to adjust after the fact, but at least for now, I'm going to start with the top hole. You should have 3 sets of hardware here: long bolts, locking washers, flat washers. Again, we're going to go ahead and get the installation done of each of the cross pieces and the windscreen. I would highly recommend not tightening these things down, just hand tighten. So again, during the installation piece, especially when we're installing the hardware here onto the cab, it's going to be a lot easier, I think, if everything's loose. And then once we get everything squared up on the cab, then we can go ahead and tighten them down. I'm going to go ahead and again demonstrate what we're doing here. So we have the bolt, locking washer, flat washer, and then the large part of the thread sticking out. Now, I'm going to use this plain piece because it's a lot easier to see, I think, but you can see inside of each of those cross channels there is a threaded groove. So we're going to go ahead and put that bolt into this top groove here. A little word to the wise: while the installation of the windscreen was a size 3 Phillips, the hardware for the side is actually a Torx bit. You can see there, I think, a little bit better. So we're going to be using this piece here. As you see, it's a T30. All right, I found it easiest to go ahead and hand start each of these bolts, and then I'm going to come back later and I'm going to use my drill driver at a very low torque setting and tighten them up. Again, you're going to definitely want it loose to begin with because as you can see, you can only do one side at a time. It'll allow you to manipulate the bar into place. And then again, I will go ahead and use the lowest torque setting on the drill driver to go ahead and at least give it some structural rigidity before we install this rack up on the truck. So, all right, inside this bag here, you're going to find these 3 bits of hardware. You have a bolt, a flat washer, and a ring. Now, the bolt is squared off, as you can see, so that's meant to drop inside that channel, and so it can slide in and out, and it won't turn, so you can actually tighten that bolt. Now, have some pre-assembled here. Again, you can see the squareness of the bolt. So once you get it set down into the groove of the drop-in channel, just a little bit of work, it slides in and out, and then you of course tighten it down because that bolt won't be moving because the square sides will hold it in place. So, all right, you can see I've saved the styrofoam sheets here to kind of help with the placement of the rack on the roof before actually drilling the holes. I've already removed the channel. Now, of course, some of you may know I actually had a vinyl wrap put on the roof line, so it comes down into this channel. That's what that black is. However, these little clips are, need to remain in here. This helps hold in the weather stripping. I removed my antenna so I can put the rack on. As you see, there's very little clearance here. You're going to have to pick a position such that when you replace the antenna, all right, it is going to be free from this last smaller rack. And so I've picked a position where I have just a little bit of clearance here off of the rack for the antenna. That way it doesn't interfere with reception. So I'm going to go ahead and mark those points, and I'll go ahead and let you know where we're at as far as distance wise. But again, this is why it's important. You just mock it up first, and again, you can see very little clearance between the two, but just enough so that the rack is actually not sticking off the back of the cab. You can see right here, it's just a little bit forward from the back end. So, all right, now comes the fun part, using my Sharpie marker and marking the areas for drilling. All right, so I have a square sitting on top of the rack. I'm gonna go ahead and place it flush on the mounting plate, as well as square here with the back bar. And in essence, what we have here is roughly, it's hard to see from this angle, but actually it's gonna be 1 inch to the back stud there for the mounting clip. From my vantage point, it's actually 1 inch, there it is, 1 inch to that back stud. So that's going to be my reference point, and I'm going to go ahead and mark the rest of the drilling points. I will again check it before I drill it, because you measure twice, drill once. All right, so you might be wondering, how am I going to mark these? Well, these holes here, unfortunately, are too narrow to fit my silver Sharpie in. So I went into the kids' drawer and found one of these. They're normally the most useless crayon in the pack, the white crayon, but it fits perfectly in the groove. And again, you can see that I used the styrofoam sheeting there to protect the cab, but I've got all 6 brackets now marked with the white crayon. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the rack. I'm going to double check all my measurements, make sure they're equal on both sides before I start to drill. Now that the rack has been removed, you can see how much more visible those white crayon marks are on the channel. Again, you have those clips over studs all the way up. Just want to show you the front measurement. So from that peg forward, we're at 1.5 and 3.5 inches. Again, this is the front before the windscreen. So it'll be the second peg, not the first, but second peg going forward, 1.5 inches, 3.5 inches. All right, for the middle mounting bracket, we are 6 inches and 8 inches back from that clip peg. Now that peg happens to be the one over the B pillar here. Okay, so there's the B pillar. There's that peg, 6 inches and 8 inches. All right, I'm confirming measurements on the driver's side now. So the front mounting bracket is 1.5 and 3.5 inches forward from the second peg. And if we switch to the back here, we'll see that we are 6 inches and 8 inches back from that mounting peg over the B pillar. All right, passenger side is drilled. As you can see, the rivets are now installed in 3/8 inch holes. Again, you're gonna need a 3/8 inch hole. I tried a 5/16, it's too tight. Don't forget, these will expand underneath the surface once you put the bolt in. So again, 3/8 inch hole. Another thing I learned is you definitely want to have a shot vac around while you're drilling. There's a lot of metal debris that's shooting out and around, so having a shot vac while you're drilling helps keep that debris to a minimum. The other thing that I learned is that the metal in the back and the middle is the same. However, it appears that the metal towards the front was much thicker, took longer and took more pressure to get through that metal on the front end of the truck. So just be prepared for that. Inside your larger mounting kit bag, you're going to see two bits of hardware you may be wondering what they're for. This threaded nut here and this longer bolt. These two are used in conjunction to anchor this nut set into the roof. Now you can see where it's split here. So as you tighten the bolt, which is going to be actually used through the middle of the threaded nut, it's threaded, but you're not actually going to use the threads. The bolt actually slips right through here. But it does allow you to put a 1/2-inch wrench on this nut, and as the bolt tightens this to the nut set with the friction, holding this still, but still drilling or using an impact wrench with this here will allow you to tighten the bolt inside the nut set. I'm going to go ahead and put a bead of silicone around the inside of the flange here so that as it sets down in, it's going to expand and create a nice water seal contact. Then I'm going to go ahead and put silicone on top of it to also just increase the waterproofing capabilities. One thing I found very useful during the installation is having this larger washer on top of the threaded bolt. So again, that's a 1/2 inch here. This is 9/16. That allowed the impact wrench to sit on top nicely without having to worry about interfering with the bolt. So I can get that down here, and while I'm holding the 1/2 inch wrench there, I get a nice tight torque. All right, you can see the aluminum spacers underneath the bracket. My wife helped me lift the rack up onto the truck. Thank you, honey. She did not allow me to video that. She was not in her best attire, but I appreciate her help, so thanks, babe. Anyway, after we got it seated, we hand tightened these bolts on all 6 brackets. Now I'm going to go back and square it up. Make sure you add silicone to the bottom underneath the spacers again for a nice watertight seal. I'm probably going to go ahead and add a little bit of silicone inside the spacer and before I tighten the bolts down, but I'm going to get it square first. There we go. Now we're going to get our bolt back in and snug it down. Okay, so with the silicone in the spacer, I'll work its way down in by hand and then get the handy little power tool out and torque it down. As you can see, I've decided not to go ahead and mount the rack through the weather stripping rather than we're going to go ahead and cut it off. So I've been using this spare piece of lumber here, and I've been using my cordless cutoff wheel to go ahead and make the cuts through this metal. A lot easier than using a Dremel. Now I am using the Dremel tool afterwards though to give it a contoured shape to kind of match the mounting spacer. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this one, grind it, and then I'll show you a picture here in just a second. So you can see once I made the cut, you got a nice little tapered end there so it can slide up and around those aluminum spacers for a little tighter fit. All right, so I'm going to take the piece and install it upside down in the channel at first. This is for a dry fit. Make sure it fits underneath the brackets nicely, which it does. Then I'm going to remove that from the track. Make sure I get the mounting piece set up right where the stud is. That way it makes it a lot easier when I come back, and I'll be able to snap it in place with the silicone on the underside. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of silicone there at the beginning to help hold down the cut. And then we're going to come around to the back and also put a little dollop of silicone back here as well. Okay, now time to install the weather strip. I'm going to go ahead and lay the front end down. Come back, slide the back end down. I already have the brackets aligned, so they should just snap in place with a little bit of pressure. And we are good to go. All right, folks, there you go. That is the end of the installation for the Prinsu CabRac for the State of Colorado Crew Cab.